is for what we should be doing with our life. Jacob did very well with this, and as a matter of fact, they asked him would he make some trips back to the United States and talk to some of the largest Methodist churches who were supporting this program in Honduras. And he said, sure, I'd love to do that. He was a little apprehensive about his presentation, so he tells the story of going to the very first big Methodist church, and he makes the presentation explaining how this church is supporting the program in Honduras and what they're doing. And at the end, they asked for questions, if anyone had questions. And one lady raised her hand, and she said, so really, are you doing the Lord's work, or are you just cleaning teeth? And he said, in a matter of a split second, 1,000 things went through his head. The doubt of his parents, all those little things. And then he said he burst out into laughter, as most of the congregation did, at the question, are you doing the Lord's work, or are you just cleaning teeth? And he replied, is there really any difference? Yeah, it's the same thing. He was able to connect with his inner conviction and get clear about who he was and following his guidance. The Star of Bethlehem is that presence that will always feel like it's asking us, what is guiding your life? Where are you turning for guidance and direction? And are you absolutely clear? Do you have clear goals and clear intentions about where you would like to go with your life? Now, I have a confession to make. When it comes to following directions, I'm a great map reader, but I'm a little directionally challenged. If you point that direction, I have no clue if it's north, south, east, or west, unless I can find the sun. And then depending on the time of year, I might can figure it out. Anybody else? Come on. There has to be at least one man in the congregation. Thank you. So when I was 17 years old, still living at home, my two girlfriends and I had an opportunity to travel. I grew up in North Carolina. North Carolina is one of those long states. It's about 8 hours from one end to the other, and we lived close to the East Coast. But we were going all the way to the west side, which was a long drive to go to this summer program. And my father did not want me to drive my car. Now, I don't know why. It was a perfectly good Ford Pinto, but he had other ideas about what I should be driving. And so he went to his brother, who had a car he never drove, and he brought that home and told me I'd be driving that. It was the biggest tank-looking car, light yellow. You know, it was one of those giant Oldsmobiles that you got in it, you really didn't drive it, you just pointed in a direction and sort of went. So my girlfriends and I climbed into this car to head across the state, maps, and when I got in the car, he had this fascinating thing. It was one of the first versions of a GPS system. It's one of the things that stuck on the dash. It was a little ball and had north, south, east, west. So we get far enough out of our hometown that we now are relying on maps. And we reach a point where our maps say turn south or some direction. And we happen to notice that the thing on the dash was saying something different. So then the three of us got in an argument about which set of directions we should follow, and we concluded that's the most sophisticated thing in the car. We probably should follow that. So we tried to follow that, and we got so lost it was ridiculous. Well, we finally stopped and asked for directions and went back to our good old-fashioned map reading and got there. And when I got back and I took the car back to my uncle's house, he said, how'd that car do for you? I said, well, it did fine, but that little thing didn't work. He said, oh, honey, that hadn't worked in years. No matter what direction you go, it points north. He said, I think there's so much metal in that big car, it just can't work. I wanted to say, well, why don't you take it out of the car? But I said, well, thank you very much for letting me borrow your car. You know, but it's a great metaphor for you can't follow somebody else's directions. Just because it may look better, just because you may think it works, you have to follow your guidance. In the story of the wise men following the Star of the Bethlehem, does anyone know what direction the star came from? The east, right. The east symbolically represents within. It is following our guidance that comes from within. It's not an outside guidance system. Now, absolutely, we look at what we're going at to see how it's working, but the guidance must come from within. We follow the guidance from the east. The wise men had a similar thing where they started questioning. In the Gospel of Luke, when we're told that the wise men were following the star, going to find this miracle, going to find the Christ child, the star appeared and they began to follow the star. But then they started talking amongst themselves. They started thinking about, now if a king were born, where would it be? Where should a king be? They started trying to figure it out, and in trying to figure it out, they went to where they thought it would be and wound up having a conversation with King Herod. Now what you may not realize unless you read the scriptures closely, but all during that time, the star disappeared. You cannot follow two sets of guidance. I tried it. I tried following one thing that didn't work and a map. King Herod represents that part that seeks to kill or to destroy. And when we try to follow guidance that's not authentically ours, it's as if it kills your hope, it kills it, that it doesn't, rather than breathing life into it, it confuses it. And in the gospel story of Luke, when they finally stopped this conversation with King Herod and left, then and only then did the star reappear. And they could again begin to follow this particular star. Following our guidance is what life is really all about. Because that question of, what do you want to do with your life? Where are you headed with your life? And what guidance are you following? I've discovered in my own life that when I find myself walking in those circles and I've got that committee in my head of what ifs or speculation, I call it a speculation committee. What about this or what about that? The greatest thing that I have learned to do is to get back in my body and just say, okay, where are my feet right now? In this very moment, where are my feet? And what is the next step that I can take right here and right now? And refocus on my inner guidance. It's never too late to follow your own guidance. Harlan was 5 years old when his father died. And he was the oldest one, the oldest child in the household. So at 5 and 6 years old, he became the little man of the house. And he took on a lot of responsibility. His mother had to take a job which required her to be out of the house a lot. Harlan cooked, cleaned, took care of his siblings. And he actually, in later years, said he enjoyed it. That was one of the most enjoyable things that he loved. But when he was in the 7th grade, his mother remarried, and the man that she married resented him. And as he got a little older, the man that she married began to mistreat him to such an extent that he ran away from home. He didn't have anything else to do, didn't know what to do, so he falsified his birth certificate and he joined the Army. He joined the Army when he was 15 or 16 years old. Served a few years in the Army, and he did all sorts of different things throughout his life. Until finally he started working at a gas station, and at the gas station he set up a little area where he could cook because he had always loved to cook. So he would cook meals and serve gas, or had a gas station, and that was working for him until he was in his early 60s. At that particular time, the city rerouted the highway system, so the road that had always gone right in front of his place, it no longer was the main street. There was a new bypass in town. When that happened, his business went under. At this particular time, now he was almost 65 years old, and he wrote, he said, "It was in a time in my life when I should have been able to retire, and I had to make a decision. Am I going to get resentful about this, or am I going to reconnect with my joy?" He spent some time and was able to reconnect with his joy. And at 65 years old, he asked himself, where do I want to go with my life? Realizing it's never too late to start anew. It's never too late to take your life in a new direction. And a key element for doing this is your joy barometer. How is your joy? Now, joy is not happiness. Happiness is like the tide. It comes and it goes. Someone can come into your life and you're happy as a camper. Someone can leave your life and you're as depressed as can be. But joy is a quality of spirit.